There is a kind of quiet you only notice when you are inside your own place. It is not the dull quiet that comes from having nothing to do, and it is not the empty kind either. It is the quiet that makes you feel protected. You hear the low buzz of the refrigerator, the gentle ticking of a clock, and it hits you that, for this moment, nobody is asking anything from you. You do not have to be anywhere else. It does not feel like loneliness at all. It feels like calm. A lot of people do not get that. They see someone who prefers being at home and they label them as antisocial, distant, or scared of life itself. But for people like me, home is not a place to hide from life. It is the only place where I can breathe fully. Outside these walls, everything feels loud. There is constant comparison, pressure to perform, pressure to keep up. Out there, I slowly lose track of who I am. When I am home, I find myself again. I think this started early in life. Schoolrooms, buses, packed hallways, all those spaces full of noise and motion. For some of us, those places felt like constant tests. You had to talk louder to get noticed, act different to be accepted, and smile bigger just to look like you were fine. So I learned to build something inside instead, an inner world that was quieter, slower, and kinder. That is when home stopped being just a building. It turned into something sacred. Psychologists explain that people who love being at home are often highly sensitive to what is happening around them. Their brains take in the world more intensely than others. Bright lights, loud voices, nonstop talking. After a while, it feels overwhelming, like standing in a flood. That is why the quiet of home is not running away. It is restoring balance. It is the nervous system finally saying, "Here I can rest." Still, it goes deeper than overstimulation. There is something almost spiritual about it. Home is the only place where I can remove the mask I wear in public. The social version of me, the one that knows when to smile, what to say, and how to blend in. When the door closes, that version fades away. What remains is the real one, the part of me that does not need approval, the part that is not trying to impress anyone, just a person existing. It is strange how you can be surrounded by people all day and still feel invisible. Yet the moment I am home, sitting near a window with a warm drink, I finally feel seen by myself. That is the quiet magic of being alone. It is not isolation. It is intimacy, just turned inward. Our culture praises extroversion. We cheer for people who are always busy, always going, always posting and performing. Silence makes people uncomfortable. Stillness gets mistaken for laziness. But there is strength in knowing how to be alone without feeling empty. People like that understand something important. Fulfillment does not always come from noise. Sometimes it lives in the pauses. There is an old saying that if you never look inward, you end up feeling empty. For people who love staying home, turning inward is not avoidance. It is alignment. It is how we sort through emotions, recover from too much stimulation, and reconnect with what feels real. When you are always around others, your identity gets split into pieces. You become a different version of yourself for every group. At home, there is only one audience, yourself. Of course, there is a line between healthy solitude and shutting down. Even the most introverted people need connection. Here's the interesting part. People who enjoy staying home often form deeper relationships, not weaker ones. They do not spend energy on shallow connections. They want bonds where silence feels safe, where two people can sit together for hours without forcing conversation. It is about presence, not performance. When psychologists study solitude, they discover something interesting. People who choose to spend time alone on purpose often show higher creativity and stronger emotional awareness. Not because they are smarter, but because they reflect. They sit with their feelings instead of drowning in them. They watch their thoughts instead of running from them. In that quiet space, ideas grow. Understanding appears. Old emotional wounds begin to heal without anyone noticing. Think about your biggest moments of clarity. They probably did not happen at loud parties or crowded cafes. They happened in the shower, late at night in your room, or on a quiet walk when no one else was there. That is the hidden strength of staying home. It gives your mind the space it needs to speak honestly. Still, There is irony here. Many people who love being home feel guilty about it, like they are missing something, like life is happening somewhere else and they are falling behind. Social media makes this feeling stronger. Endless pictures of trips, gatherings, and smiling faces can make home lovers feel like they are doing life wrong. But those images are only highlights, not the whole truth. Everyone is searching for peace. For some people, peace looks like adventure and crowds. For others, peace looks like a quiet home and a closed door. There is something very human about needing a place to pull back, to stop for a moment, to reset your mind. Long ago, monks would disappear into mountains or sit alone in caves to meditate. Today, people do the same thing in bedrooms, quiet reading corners, or small apartments filled with plants and soft music. It is the same instinct. After chaos, we look for stillness. Home has simply become the modern version of a temple, and there is real psychology behind it. When I am at home, I am in what scientists describe as a low threat environment. My body no longer feels like it has to stay on guard. It produces less cortisol, the stress hormone, because there is nothing to defend against and no role to perform. That is why my thoughts feel clearer at home. That is also why emotions sometimes surface when I am alone. The walls come down. The feelings I have been holding in all day finally come up. It looks like quiet from the outside, but inside, it is healing happening in disguise. Not everyone understands this. People will say things like, you need to go out more, or you are wasting your youth. What they miss is that staying home does not mean doing nothing. Some of the most important growth happens there: reading, thinking, writing things down, letting your mind wander. These are small, quiet revolutions happening behind closed doors. People who love staying home are not hiding from the world. Most of the time, they are preparing for it. They are recharging their energy, putting themselves back together, finding their center again. And when they do step back out, they bring steadiness instead of noise. There is also comfort in routine. The brain likes knowing what to expect because predictability lowers anxiety. When you know where everything is, when the space feels familiar, your mind can finally relax. For someone who loves being at home, that sense of order becomes meaningful. It is not boredom, it is emotional balance. Every small habit becomes a signal of safety. Lighting a candle, making the same coffee every morning, sitting in the same chair. Each one quietly tells the nervous system you are safe here. In a world that worships productivity, that kind of stillness can look rebellious. We are taught that to matter, we must always be visible, always active, always achieving something. People who love staying home challenge that belief without saying a word. They show that meaning does not always come from movement. Sometimes it comes from being still, from sitting long enough to notice rain tapping against the window, from having time to think about who you are becoming. That might be why people who enjoy solitude often have such rich inner lives. When you spend real time alone, imagination wakes up. You start noticing things other people overlook: beauty in ordinary moments, the way sunlight lands on a wall, the way dust floats in the air, the sound of distant laughter passing through thin walls. There is a quiet beauty in all of that, a slower kind of happiness that does not need to be shared or posted. Some people will never understand that kind of peace. For them, silence feels heavy. Being alone feels like punishment. But for people like me, silence is not empty. It is music. It is the sound of finally feeling enough. There is a strange paradox in people who love staying home. They are often seen as distant or detached, but the truth is they feel everything deeply. Every conversation, every sound, every look leaves an impression. When the world gets too loud, the instinct is not to run from it, but to protect inner peace. It is not fear of others, it is care for oneself. You can learn a lot about someone by how they shape their space. Some homes are full of light and music, plants reaching toward the windows, air that feels open and warm. Others are softer: dim lights, heavy blankets, the smell of coffee or candles in the air. Each home reflects the person living inside it. It becomes a physical expression of their inner world. The quiet ones create warmth. The dreamers create comfort. The thinkers create order. Inside those walls, they build entire worlds no one else ever sees. When psychologists look at solitude and creativity, they find something meaningful. People who spend more time alone often show greater originality, empathy, and imagination. Solitude gives them the freedom to hear their own voice without interruption or judgment. When you are always around people, your thoughts start to change shape. You think in a way that sounds acceptable to others. But when you are alone, your thoughts come out as they truly are. That is where real creativity begins. Think about great artists, writers, thinkers, and inventors. Many of them valued being alone, not because they disliked people, but because they needed space to think, to imagine, to struggle with their own ideas. One writer once said that a woman needs money and a room of her own if she wants to write fiction. At its core, that idea is simple. Everyone needs a space where they are free to be themselves, uninterrupted. That truth really applies to everyone. All of us need some kind of space of our own, whether it is real or symbolic, to figure out who we are. People who enjoy staying home have learned something important early on. The outside world does not get to define them. They do not need constant noise to feel alive. They do not need nonstop approval to feel valuable. When you spend enough time alone with yourself, you stop chasing applause. You start building a kind of peace that no one else can touch. Still, being alone is not always easy. Solitude can feel challenging. When distractions disappear, your thoughts get louder. And sometimes that feels uncomfortable. That is why many people struggle to stay home for long periods of time. The silence starts reflecting back the things they have been avoiding. But those who learn to sit with that silence discover something powerful. Peace is not about having no thoughts at all. It is about accepting the thoughts you do have. They learn to stay with their emotions, to watch them rise and fall without trying to escape. That is emotional maturity at its most honest level. Psychology supports this idea. Being comfortable with solitude is one of the strongest signs of self-awareness. People who enjoy their own company tend to have a steadier sense of who they are. They are less influenced by peer pressure, less dependent on praise, and more guided by their own values. When you have spent enough time in quiet, you learn to tell the difference between your own voice and the noise of everyone else. That is how wisdom develops. It grows in quiet spaces. That does not mean people who love staying home never feel lonely. They do, but their loneliness feels different. It is not an empty ache. It is a longing for connection that feels meaningful, not rushed or shallow. They would rather be alone than surrounded by people who make them feel invisible. That is not pride, that is discernment. When they do find the right people they love in a deep and steady way, they understand the value of energy. They give attention thoughtfully, show affection intentionally, and build trust slowly. That is why their relationships often last. They are built on depth, not noise. There is another side to this that does not get talked about as much. Sometimes people fall in love with being at home, not because they are calm, but because they are exhausted, tired of being misunderstood, tired of the world asking them to be versions of themselves that do not feel real. For them, home is the only place where they do not have to perform. That is not escapism. It is recovery. Psychologists call this emotional decompression. It happens after spending too much time pretending. You walk through the door, feel the need to lie down, stop moving, and do nothing. That is your body finally letting go. You have been holding yourself together all day, managing impressions, regulating emotions, swallowing reactions. When you get home and everything drops at once, that is not laziness. That is healing. People who love staying home often carry a strong sense of empathy. They pick up on other people's moods easily. They notice tone of voice, posture, and small shifts in energy that most people miss. That sensitivity is a gift, but it is also draining. So they retreat to restore themselves. That retreat allows them to return to the world calmer, clearer, and more grounded. The more you look at this, the clearer it becomes. Staying home is not just a preference, it is a rhythm of personality. Some people are wired for external stimulation. They thrive on movement, interaction, and chaos. Others are wired for reflection. They thrive on routine, pattern, and peace. Neither way is better. They are simply different ways of being human. But because society celebrates constant motion, quieter people often feel like something is wrong with them. The truth is, they are just tuned to a different frequency. And there is beauty in that. The world needs both types, the ones who chase and the ones who reflect, the explorers and the observers, the ones who create noise and the ones who listen for meaning within it. Often it is the listeners who help the world make sense of itself. They turn chaos into understanding, noise into story, distraction into depth. That may be why so many writers, thinkers, and artists feel most alive at home. They are not running from the world. They are trying to feel it more deeply. They turn solitude into art, stillness into clarity, quiet into creation. Their homes become extensions of their minds, physical spaces shaped by thought and memory. Every small detail carries intention. Every corner holds meaning. Even for people who are not artists, the psychology is the same. Home is where we process life. It is where we sort through emotions we could not express outside. It is where we return to ourselves after being too many versions for too long. That return, that feeling of coming home to who you really are, is one of the most important psychological needs we have. No matter how far a person travels, the truth is simple. Everyone needs a safe place to come back to, a place where you can set down your armor and just exist as you are. For some people, that safety lives in other people. For others, it lives in quiet rooms, four familiar walls, and a soft, steady light. There is something almost sacred about choosing stillness instead of spectacle. It takes real courage to turn away from noise, to step back from the constant pressure to be seen, to find worth in being unseen. Because when you do, something unexpected happens. Your real self comes back. You stop living to impress anyone. You start living to express what is true for you. Life stops feeling like a race and starts feeling like a conversation. And the walls that once seemed limiting begin to feel like support, even like wings. That is the quiet psychology of people who love staying home. They are not avoiding life. They are meeting it in a different way. They are paying attention to it, feeling it fully, honoring it at a slower pace. They are not running from the world. They are shaping a version of it that feels more human, a version where the heart can breathe. And when they do step outside, when they choose to go back into the world, they carry something rare with them, a calm presence. They do not add to the noise, they bring stillness with them like an offering. Once you find peace in solitude, you stop hunting for it in chaos. You stop expecting other people to make you feel safe or whole. You carry that sense of home inside yourself. So if you are someone who loves staying home, do not apologize for it. Do not let anyone convince you that peace means laziness or that comfort means you have settled for less. You are not missing out. You are tuning in. You are doing inner work that most people are too busy to notice. And even though it looks quiet from the outside, that work shapes everything else. When the world feels uncertain and people are searching for meaning, it is often the quiet ones who already know where it lives. Not in crowds or constant activity, but in the gentle rhythm of ordinary days. Morning light filling a room, evening rain tapping the window, the steady sound of your own heartbeat in a space that finally feels like yours. That is the beauty of it. Home is not just a structure. It is peace you earned, not something handed to you. A sanctuary built from patience, presence, and honesty. It is the place where you meet yourself over and over again until one day you realize something important. You are never truly alone. You are just finding your way back to yourself. Some people assume that staying home means you have given up on life, but more often it means you have stopped running from who you are. There is a quiet relief that comes when you no longer feel forced to chase every invitation, every trend, every weekend plan that promises excitement but leaves you drained. You start to see that joy does not always need witnesses. Some of the best moments happen in silence. Rain hitting the glass, the smell of something baking in the oven, the way sunlight slowly moves across the floor in the afternoon. You begin to notice things you used to overlook, how your body relaxes when the outside world fades. The simple satisfaction of moving at your own speed. The way your mind opens when it is no longer fighting for space and other people's noise. That is not isolation. It is a reunion with your own mind. Still, even in that peace, guilt can creep in. We live in a world that worships visibility. Being seen is treated like proof that you are alive. If you are not posting, not out, not part of the constant rush, people assume you are disappearing. But maybe fading from their view is how you come into focus for yourself. Maybe a quiet life is not about vanishing, but about finally existing without performing. At home, you learn that solitude is not the absence of connection. It is the reset that makes real connection possible. You realize that not every friendship needs constant updates. Not every dream needs an audience. Not every day has to be productive to matter. There is beauty in an unseen life, in moments no one applauds, in growth that only you can feel. And maybe that is the real secret. People who love staying home are not turning away from life. They are walking toward it slowly and on purpose, without the noise. They are remembering what it means to simply be, not to impress, not to achieve, but to feel. Because sometimes the bravest thing you can do is nothing at all. To sit quietly with yourself and finally understand that you are enough. Don't forget subscribe, like the video, and turn on notifications.